This show is sponsored by you, our listener. Stick around until after the news to hear more about that. This is Cup of Go for October 18, 2024. Keep up to date with the important happenings in the Go community in about 15 minutes per week. I'm Jonathan Hall.
And I'm Shai Nechmad.
Hello, Shai.
Hello. I am very much dreading the date tomorrow.
Why is that?
It is my 30th birthday, and it's just too round of a date for me to not worry about bugs. Like, is it actually my 30th, or did we miscount a year because of a leap day? Then you start reading about leap seconds, time zones. The government in Israel changed, the daylight saving times a couple of times over the last 30 years. I'm wondering if it is my 30th, or is it just a misconception? So yeah, I'm worried about dates because I'm a programmer. And nothing else is scary about growing up. Let's talk about conferences.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about a couple meetups, some proposals and blog posts. We don't have a whole lot of hard news, but we're gonna still talk about what's happening in the Go community. So
hard news, like we usually
have
the deep politics, exactly. The economics of Golandia.
Exactly.
No, that's not us. Let's nitpick about linter choices for a little while.
Let's do it. So, as you mentioned, these aren't really conferences, but meetups. A couple that came onto my radar. If you're in Dubai, and who doesn't want to be in Dubai? It's a beautiful city. The first, apparently, ever Go UAE meetup is happening on the 26th.
Ooh, cool.
So we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
I can just imagine it happening on a 50-story golden building, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Send us pictures of the event. We want to see how flashy the venue was.
Emirates Tower. That sounds fancy.
It sounds fancy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really down for the first meetup of a city. Yeah. That's very, very cool. Guarev and Rashid, let us know how it goes. And if you're going, let us know how it went.
Yeah, please.
The topics, by the way, you said this is a meetup, but the topic list is long enough to, at least for me, to say conference. There are 5 talks. Usually for me, meetup is talk, a little bit of pizza, talk, and then you're gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a 2-hour evening engagement.
Usually, yeah.
But this sounds like a serious thing. It is lightning talks when you read into the agenda. Right. Every single one is 15 minutes, which I think is a better bang for your buck. Most people are not good enough speakers to hold a conversation for over 15 minutes. Which is why that's the limit for our news.
And I have to say, the 15-minute lightning talk, that's good if you're going to do just lightning talks at the meetup in Amsterdam, where I'm no longer a organizer. Lightning talks usually 5 minutes. 15 minutes is great for 5 talks. You're going to get a lot of information for your time. Go to the first meetup in Dubai.
Cool.
And we also have another meetup coming up in Leipzig, Germany. This is the one I would have loved to have attended. I have a friend in Leipzig. I've been there a few times. I missed one of their meetups by, I think, a day. The last time I was there, kind of made me sad. But October 29, if you're in that part of Germany, check out their meetup. They have one talk, a little more, 2 talks. One about test coverage in Go, and one about deterministic currency in Go tests. So it's all about testing in Leipzig.
Yeah. I think it's very, very cool the package that they're going to talk about. Test coverage, I don't know, to me it always feels like just a chore. Just get the thing working in CI and get the artifacts lined up. And then if you have a third party, I forgot what's called Code Climate or one of the other 100 SaaS apps that want to eat that and put it on dashboard. And then you got to start arguing about whether coverage is correct for your project, blah, blah, blah. Is it a metric at all? Should you worry about it? Blah, 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 blah. The new thing I learned, from reading this, the Leipzig talk tracks, is Timestone. Looks like a pretty cool library aimed at eliminating flaky unit tests, which, yes, please. Anybody who's working on that is an angel in my book. It's about deterministic unit tests for concurrent Go code when you're testing, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
I guess if you haven't run into it, you'd be like, why? But if you have run into flaky tests that relate to threads and things like that, like Go routines, you'd love to hear about it. And it's actually super it's a super new thing last week. Looks like released for the talk kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Honestly. Yeah. But I'm down. I've started. Keep working on it. We love these sorts of things.
Yep, awesome. That's all I have for conferences and meetups for now. If you're listening and you know of one coming up, let us know so we can include it in the show. Let's move on to a proposal.
There are no proposal minutes from the last 2 weeks, which is totally fine. Summarizing meetings is annoying. We totally get it. There is one proposal that we wanted to mention that's in its final comment period, and I think it's relevant for people to comment if it affects them. What do you think about HTTP codes? I think they're a great invention.
They're a blunt instrument, but they're good, yeah.
They're just like very pragmatic enough, right? 200 means everything okay. 300 means you got to look for it somewhere else. 400, it's your fault. 500, it's my fault. Like very easy. What are 100s?
100s.
Like 1xx.
Yeah,
mean?
Those are for continuation, aren't they? They're not commonly used, but
they're very much not commonly used, to the point where I almost don't remember them by heart. I do try to make a point of remembering HTTP codes by heart, just because they force me to learn it by heart in the army. But other than that, there's literally no reason to remember the 100 ones. It's interim responses. So informational things like I'm switching protocols, or I'm processing if you're developing the WebDAV, like a video thing. No response is ready yet. Early hints, some kind of weird things. But apparently, you can send an arbitrary number of them, according to HTTP. In Go's client, that arbitrary number is not infinite, it's 5. Can you guess why it's 5?
No.
All right, they can't either. It's just arbitrary in the code, and literally above that number, it says arbitrary bound on number of informational responses, which just makes sense, whatever. And if you're talking about like resumable uploads, for example, which is the background for the opening of this proposal by Marius from Germany, he's like in the IETF working on resumable uploads, where I guess, the server can sort of inform the client about the upload progress and send a lot of hundreds just to let you know, oh, continue. It's still progressing. And then once you get to the limit of 5, you get an error. And you can't even read like the final thing. Like you can't get to the 200 at the end, which you can send only one in HTTP. And there's a response here which sounds very authoritative. And the first time I read it, I was like, oh, this is too authoritative. Someone's like, this is a bug in the Go client. It sounds very like someone who knows what they're talking about, right?
It sounds like a Reddit troll.
So actually it is Roy Fielding,
right?
Who like is the person behind the Apache license and Apache HTTPD. Is like
principal author of the HTTP spec, inventor of REST.
Yeah. So it is a bug in the Go client, and there's a bunch of the discussion here about how to fix it in the future, what other HTTP clients libraries are doing. Because if you do like infinite, you're suddenly opening yourself up to slow loris attacks, where someone can send you very slow, very continuous drip of 100s and DDoS your server with just a bunch of 100s or your client or whatever. It's like, why do it to the client side? Like, what's going on? It's a very interesting discussion. It's going to be accepted. And I think if you have 100 HTTP usage, like if you ever use this code in Go code, you should probably read this, because I can't assume this is going to be a non-breaking change by the end. And anybody contributing a real use case to these sorts of discussions is very relevant. But overall, looks like just a bug based on the HTTP spec. Who could have guessed?
With comments from Russ Cox like, do you have a concrete proposal for a new API here? You know this isn't just a quick fix. There's a lot of thought going into it. And it, like you said, it's probably a breaking change.
By the way, if any security researchers are listening, it's not just if you're a user of this like very niche HTTP code and part of the spec. Also, if you're looking to make a name for yourself and find some vulnerabilities, there are like 5 here. There are 5, just for sure. One for each arbitrary number.
There's an arbitrary number 5, but yeah, there's 5.
Yeah, I'm just sure that there's more like vulnerabilities in the implementation here. Getting HTTP spec right on the first try and on the second try is very, very difficult. So just an interesting proposal if you're into networking or HTTP and things like that. Check it out. Other than that, we just have some community things going on, right?
We do. This could be a big topic. It came up on my Reddit radar, which was working this week for the first time in months. And I don't know, it's more a discussion topic. It's not that there was anything particularly revealing in the discussion, but the title is Go the Right Choice for My Startup? And I have some opinions on this. I'm curious, though, before I reveal my hand, what do you think? The criteria that the author presents are that the startup doesn't have any heavy technical requirements right now. It's mostly a CRUD application. And then he talks about how Go is simple. It's nice at avoiding dependencies. I guess talking about the rich standard library and maybe a static compiling. But then says that doing CRUD in Go is kind of repetitive and boring. Would it be better to use a language with sort of dynamic typing that makes that easier, or maybe inheritance
that has more problems? So it's not that boring to develop these boring lines of code. Well, I don't think I need to voice my opinion. I was the VP R&D of a startup, and we used Go. Mm-hmm. Like the proof is in the pudding, and it's still, like, as far as I know, it's still going strong. But a language is just a tool, right? We used Go for the backend, like microservice backend, where it made sense. And we used Python for like AI stuff and machine learning things and data analysis where it made sense. And we used React JavaScript for the front end to start, and then TypeScript. The main decision point for my CDO and me at each point was picking something that's reasonable. It doesn't have to be great. It just doesn't have to have any glaring like problems, like unsupported. For example, when we just started, we talked about Rust as a viable option, but it was just when the Mozilla team cut the funding by half, and they had, I think, that licensing issue. And it just seems like the leadership, I'm talking about like 2021, early 2021, just seems like Rust leadership was all over the map and very unfocused and very weird. Hard to build a startup based on that, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a first phase of filtering out languages which you can't pick, right? Because, for example, if nobody in your area knows that language, you shouldn't pick it, even if it's great. If it's way, way too new, you probably shouldn't pick it, right? Unless there's specific value for your team to use that, you should probably not pick it. And the rest of decisions are fine. And in a startup situation, the most important thing is, in my opinion, pick something that you know, right? We're going to be in a room. There's going to be like 8 people there. If one of them doesn't know the language, it's going to be difficult.
Right.
And Go, use static typing, use dynamic typing. It's not going to be the reason your startup fails or succeeds. Once you scale up in number of developers, or if you're just a person who cares about code quality and things like that, you're probably going to be frustrated working with languages that suck. That's sort of... there's some objective things that you can point at. If installing dependencies is very slow or compiling is very slow, and in Go it's fast, then that's just better, period. I mean, there are some languages which are better than others, features and things like that. But that's less important to me than, do you feel comfortable writing in Go? Way back when in Reco, both the CTO and I knew Go, and we were like, sure, let's go. Mm-hmm. Like that's good enough. Hindsight, it was great. Like we were very happy to use it. There is a specific thing about the CRUD application that annoys me, though. No matter what language I'm using, I don't want to be writing CRUD. I want it auto-generated.
Yes. And that was gonna be my main point, is if this is really just a CRUD app, you can probably find a SaaS that will do it for you. Put something in your database schema and do a little bit of configuration, and you're going to have something that does 90% of what you need. If it truly is just CRUD, and there's some that will even make user-facing interfaces to do that. I don't have names off the top of my head, but I've seen some. So if that's really all it is, and all it ever will be, don't use a language at all. Use some no-code solution.
So I'm not sure I'm that far ahead, right? Like, you could use code because it might be easier. It's less vendor locked in, things like that. But you still 95% of the code can be auto-generated. And let's remember, when you're using a language like TypeScript or Go, 99% of the code, real code, quote unquote, right? Machine code is auto-generated anyway. Yeah. Like, you're not actually writing anything that's running on the CPU or anything like that. So there's not a lot of difference, for example, defining your API schema, which you're going to do no matter what, or your database schema, which you're going to do no matter what, and just pointing OAPI gen and like SQL C at it. And then taking 5% of the code, which is main, and connecting the queries thing to the API server thing, and you're done, right? And this is super easy as well. This is the Go example. I'm sure you can do it in TypeScript and Python. And I know it's possible to do in Python as well. The thing is, this is for sure something that you would want to do regardless, even in a startup setting, right? Like, use the correct language to talk about things. If you're talking about API, use OpenAPI. If you're writing code, write some code. I don't know if I would go as far as no code, because pretty quickly you run up into some limitations, right?
I agree. So that's why I was saying, if you're never going to do more than CRUD, then I would consider that. If you expect your application to grow to the point where you are doing something more complex, then it probably is worth building the code, whether it's auto-generated or otherwise, doing it in a language that you can customize. And at that point, I pretty much agree with everything you said about which languages to choose or which ones to rule out. And like the language isn't the biggest, it's not the biggest decision. Whether you use Ruby or PHP or Python or Go or Java or whatever, it really doesn't matter that much. Use what you're comfortable with or what you can hire for if you're not going to be the one building it yourself.
So the poster on Reddit was like, I'm a solo dev. When you're a solo developer, at least for me, using Go does have a outsized benefit, because when you're in a team, I think mistakes are a bit harder to go through the filter, right? Someone reviews your code. Someone is like, add a test that you wouldn't, can tell you like, add a test or this is wrong. And you wouldn't do it because you're on your own. Even if you're super disciplined and a really good dev, there's a big difference between the work of individuals and teams, I think. With the work of individuals being more high risk, high reward, there's a big chance it's never going to get shipped, or it's going to be very bad or very, very good. Whereas the more people you add to the team, this is a very big generalization, but to me, it feels like the more people you add to the team, the more sort of mediocre everything becomes.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody's good at anything else. You have more processes, you have more reviews, things like that. When you're a solo developer, writing with like PHP on the server, shipping, things like that, is a very good move fast and break things approach.
Yeah.
I think many solo developers choose that route. And then you don't need CI, you don't need CD, you're just shipping from your laptop and whatever, you're good. And then it's 100% about comfort. For me, Go would be super comfortable there, more than TypeScript. I know it more. I think the linter covers more. Like I'm just used to it at this point. But if you're a solo developer, your personal like skill level at a specific language is very, very relevant, at least in my opinion.
So I have a question for the audience if you want to come talk about it on the Cupico Slack channel. When would you absolutely not use Go in your startup? What circumstances would make that make Go a no-go for you if you're doing a startup? Or maybe that's been your situation. Come talk about it on the Slack channel.
The speed of iteration, again, is the most important part, I think. There are some actually good insights here in threads, like people suggesting specific tools and dealing with JSON correctly. There is one post here that I really, really liked, which is you spend way too much energy like analyzing which platform, which language, like what's going to be difficult, what's going to be correct. Does it have enterprise problems? Does it have a great community? Someone posted that Golang isn't always great at getting them into an inspired zone because it's a bit mechanical and repetitive. This is not a language feature that we can point at, right? And say, oh, Go is more mechanical than Python. For me, it's the other way around. But I think it's a good mindset to keep. Like, what inspires you to write really good code? I know that dealing with databases should be done with SQL, but for me, writing SQL is very like mechanical, like that person said. I'm like immediately back to 2012 when I learned SQL for the first time. My mind just closes off. I'm like trying to write the quickest SQL query I can and jump out. I'm like zero creative.
Interesting. All right.
So I don't know. That's interesting. It ends up being just a dumb startup after all that discussion. It's Uber for cats.
Woohoo!
And Uber is in Go, so hey.
It's not entirely Go, is it? I know they use Go. But
I know they use Go.
Things, yeah. All right. Well, we had some good discussions. Let's round out the episode with a lightning round with some new projects to talk about.
Lightning round. First up, do you know the Loop VAR bug? If you don't remember it, that's great because it doesn't exist in Go anymore and you don't have to worry about it.
Woohoo!
But, yep. There's a linter called copy loop var, which was there and you can still get it from GoVet or Golang CI lint. And a member of our channel, at this point, they're basically a co-host with the amount of content they're writing in the channel. Peter Aronoff submitted an issue about the copy loop var thing. We didn't want to get into the weeds. It's a very interesting feature versus bug situation. You might think it's a feature. Someone else might think it's a bug. So there's a discussion there with some differing opinions, whether it's an overreach of the linter or not. If you care about this stuff at all, the link is in the show notes.
All right. I want to talk about a tool I used, and I've actually submitted a pull request for. It's called PSQL Wire. We talked about databases earlier in the show. PSQL Wire is a library written in Go that speaks the Postgres wire protocol, most of it. So if you need to either speak to a Postgres server directly without going through libpq or something like that, or you want to implement your own Postgres speaking server in Go, this is the library for you. Check it out.
You didn't end up using it though, right?
I didn't end up using it the way I was intending to, but I have another project I will be using it for.
Cool. Talking to databases, let's talk to the most immortal database of all, Excel. If you are a person with a computer, you probably know what Excel is. And if you're listening to the show, you probably know Go. So you can probably do 1+1 and figure out what Excelize is about. But it's not going to work because you forgot to put the equal sign before. So it's just writing 1+1 in the cell now. How annoying is that? So there's Excelize. It's a thing that lets you talk to Excel spreadsheets in Go. 3 days ago, they released a new version, v2.9.0, with a lot of features. Yeah, I was like surprised. A lot of bug fixes. It just looks very active with like 20 contributors for this specific version. I don't know, maybe even more, maybe like 30. So it looks very active, has a lot of functions and things you can do with Excel. Also a breaking change. So if you're using it, you should probably figure out something about conditional formatting. So anyway, really cool. I like Excel. I think it's such a good tool. People often forget how many features and how many capabilities it has, but it is pretty amazing. At the same breath, I want to mention a really good blog post I read that's called "Is Excel Immortal?" Not related to Go, just talking about Excel and sort of comparing it to a SaaS startup that does something, all these data analytics, Power BI and Tableau and blah, 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 blah. And it starts with a very fun question. Out of these 12 things, which one will no longer exist in 2075? It's like ChatGPT, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google Search, iPhones, JP Morgan Chase, Notion, NFL, the American democracy, Tesla, the United States dollar, living creatures of any kind.
American democracy, that one's easy. That doesn't even exist in 2024.
And Microsoft Excel. So I don't know. It's a very good article. I suggest you read it just because it's interesting.
Cool.
And that does it for our show today. Stick around for a quick ad break. Like John mentioned at the beginning of the show, this show is supported by you. If you want to support us in the most direct way, please subscribe to our Patreon as a member and give us $8 a month. This is a pretty expensive hobby. We both take about an hour and a half to do an episode. And that's after we've perfected it for 2 years. And we pay for editing. Hey, Filippo, say hi to everyone. You don't really have to say hi to everyone. Maybe you can put a funny sound effect here so people actually know you edit the episode. Or you can mess up my voice to sound really stupid. That'd be fun. So supporting us that way to help cover for the editing and hosting fees, etc., is really nice. If you want to talk to us, find the links to the Patreon, maybe the swag store where you can grab a hoodie or a shirt or the amazing cup. Cupago.dev.
The new cup with the black interior, right?
Yeah, that looks good. I don't have that one.
It looks sharp. I need to get one. Yeah.
Looks dope. Actually, for you, shipping is going to be really cheap as well. But it doesn't matter because when you buy off our shop, shipping is included.
Woohoo!
Well, woohoo, I don't know. We decided that at the beginning because I didn't want to mess with shipping. And then some orders we lose money on it. Anyway, whatever. Get the cups. It's fine. All the links are there. We always say this is how you spell us in the Gopher Slack. And this is how you email us. All the links are cupago.dev. Just find them there. You're technical.
There you go.
You're fine. You're going to do fine. Other than that, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That would be greatly appreciated. We don't advertise to push this show, promote it in any way. It's just word of mouth. So any reviews you leave or if you send a link to a friend or a coworker, that would be great. That does it for us this week. And we'll see y'all next week, all right?
Program exited.
Goodbye.